Mabuhay, Kamustika, welcome. How are you? This is Bob from Love Beyond the Sea. Should divorce be permitted if only one person wants it? This isn't a trick question. On the surface, it may sound like a sensible thing, but as someone who is married to a Filipina, a woman from the Philippines, to a woman I married in less than 8 weeks who makes videos to help make marriage great again, I really don't like that sentiment. I picked this comment out from a feminist writer in China from an article that has several things that stood out to me, and I wanted to comment on a few of those. I'm going to link the article at the top of the description box for you. Could this upload today end up in the controversial collection playlist? You can decide. I will touch on the cooling off period law and why a Chinese legal expert thinks it's a good idea. There are many things here you can comment on, and I welcome you to do that. Please subscribe to Love Beyond the Sea, where I do my best to describe what love is and show you in my own life. I think we need more of that in this ever-confused world we live in, and I don't want you to be confused. China has a newly introduced law that is essentially a 30-day cooling-off period when it comes to divorce, and I want to share that with you today. This is a Phil West higher education channel. No tuition necessary, although a subscription and liking the videos and leaving comments will suffice. Now, this comes from Beijing. That's listed here on the article that I will link for you. I'm going to probably leave out names and how to pronounce things because, there's no point. I don't know how to pronounce them. But it starts out talking about an office worker and blogger in China, and her decision to divorce her husband, she said, was not one she took lightly. So I'd say that's appropriate. That's a sensible thing. That's good. She says, quote, he became so sloppy and had an addiction to gaming. Now she's 39, lives in an eastern city in China, and she said, quote, I took care of the child by myself. Excuse me. She didn't mention infidelity. That would be a serious thing, I think. The couple lived apart due to work for 13 years and had little communication. She wrote this in a personal testimony posted on the Chinese social media site. It might be called Douban, D-O-U-B-A-N. Now, I would say, is it possible living apart for 13 years may have contributed to the stagnation of their marriage? Maybe they just need to work on it. But a recently introduced law, which gives couples a 30-day cooling off period to reconsider their decision to untie the knot, finally compelled her to act. Just 3 days before the law took effect, at the start of this year, she divorced her husband. Like many other countries, China's divorce rate has steadily increased in recent years. The new law is meant to urge couples to reconsider hasty divorces, but the legislation has instead only generated frustration among women who fear that seeking a divorce has now become more difficult. My comments here, I like the desire to reconsider hasty divorce. I think that's a good idea. Unless they were stoned when they got married, a man and a woman made the mutual decision to presumably stay married for the rest of their lives. But now in China, women would rather just get it over with rather than work through the issues with the person they chose to marry, the person that assumes will get their best effort to make things work. Clearly, the fact that they had little communication for a long time hurt big time, but that is something that they can start to improve. Were they so far apart they didn't even communicate about that? Back to the article. Such was the rush to beat this new restriction that more than 1 million couples requested a divorce in the last 3 months of 2020 before this cool-off period came into effect. And that was a 13% increase on the same period compared to 2019, according to data from the Civil Affairs Bureau. Now, the feminist writer, who I will just give the initials XM because I can't pronounce her name, called the law a, quote, step backwards for women and said it limited their rights to freely seek separation from a spouse. My thoughts, a step backwards for women, but what do you call that for the men that they commit themselves to in marriage? Do they not matter anymore? her husband wasn't abusing her, wasn't unfaithful. Her and So who does she think she deserves? Did she not make a good decision in the first place? And of course, I didn't see her husband's take on their marriage in the article, his evaluation of his wife. Now, none of that is anyone's business anyway. They need to sit down, preferably led by the man she is to submit to. Biblically, as a Christian, I believe the wife submits to the husband. I've made videos on that. And it's not repressive. It's not meaning that one is better than the other. It's just it's a role and responsibility that he has. And he needs to take inventory and then take control of the situation so the two of them can stay together. The part of the article that made my eyes bleed and my head hurt and decided to make a video was this. It's a quote from XM. She says, "Marriage needs agreement from both people," she told NBC News. Then continued, "Divorce should be permitted if one person wants it." And often, according to the article, that's a woman in China. I'm just really confused by this. She said marriage needs agreement from both people. Maybe it's me, but I don't understand how she can transition from needing agreement from both to marry, but then divorce should be permitted if one person wants it. Huh? Why shouldn't the decision be mutual? Why not instead work hard at your problems together and stay together until death, like you presumably said at the wedding ceremony? The article says around, get this, 74% of first hearings in divorce cases in 2016 and 2017 were filed by women, according to a report by China's Supreme People's Court. Well, that's disturbing. Likely, that's similar here in America. Women, your man is not perfect. He's never going to be perfect. He's probably never going to obtain to the level of fantasy you see for him. He is what he is. In most cases, I think he cares for you, which is why he married you, even though he is aware that divorce is rampant. We have so-called easy divorce here in America. He just doesn't expect it to happen with the two of you. As a man, he is quite different than you. That's a good thing. That's the way it's supposed to be. He can't be everything you want him to be, but he can be what you need him to be. Don't criticize him and don't belittle him. Don't talk back to him. Respect his God-given position of being the head of the marriage. It is not an easy one. A lot of responsibility. You may need to have more serious discussion and, marriage checkups, but divorce is going to hurt both of you. Women need men. Men need women. Now, according to the article, other barriers to divorce include a gender income gap, rules on property division that tend to favor men, and traditional perceptions of gender roles. In February, Beijing court created national shockwaves when it ruled that a woman should receive financial compensation around $7,000 for housework carried out during the course of her 5-year marriage. The case stirred up a huge public debate about the status of women in society. Better access to education and jobs in recent decades has improved the financial independence and social status of women in China, who as a result seemingly have less tolerance for unhappy marriages. The article continues, however, social pressure is still present. Family and friends often discourage women from divorcing, and Chinese courts tend to rule against divorce in the first instance in order to maintain social stability. Divorce still leaves a trace of social stigma for many women. Wow, that really surprised me there. Family and friends discouraging divorce and the Chinese courts tending to rule against divorce in order to maintain stable society reminds me of the world I grew up in a long time ago. Sometimes even evidence of suffering and domestic abuse does not guarantee a divorce will be granted. In one prominent 2019 case, a woman named only as Ms. Lu from China's central Henan province was shown on security camera video being violently assaulted by her husband. Yet, the court did not rule in her favor when she filed for divorce in 2020. She posted the video online, in fact, sparking a debate on social media that pressured the court to grant the divorce. China's Civil Affairs Bureau has made it clear the new cool-off period would not apply to divorce lawsuits that involve domestic violence, but divorce through the courts is nonetheless often prolonged and unfruitful for many women. Talks about a divorce lawyer there based in Beijing said that the new cool-off period had only increased the anxiety among her clients. Quote, couples finally come to an agreement, but then they start to worry the spouse might change their mind during the 30 days. She says, it's quite unfair to women. Each day in this waiting period feels like years to them. Now my turn. But what about the husband? Having someone leave you when you want them to stay, is that fair to the man? There's a lot about marriage that isn't fair, my friend. It's not about what is fair, but about what is best and what is necessary for the health and sustaining of the marriage. No one wants to start over, do they? But for Professor, let's try this. He's in, an expert in, Hexin, by the way, for you, those of you with dirty minds, an expert in China's legal system at Hong Kong University. The introduction of the divorce cool-off period is reasonable, as divorce is such a big decision. Many countries already have similar laws, he added. In China, the rising divorce rate is compounded by declining marriage and birth rates, prompting a demographic crisis as the country's population ages. A big challenge for the government in Beijing, which has ramped up efforts to advocate traditional family values in recent years. This is me. Well, as you may know, China has been in the news a lot lately, and much of it negative here in America. But China ramping up efforts to advocate traditional family values, that's music to my ears. If you don't believe me, check out the link, to the article. The one-child policy, which was in place for decades, was abandoned in 2015. But this change alone has not been able to stem the crisis in the world's most populous country. Some think the new divorce rules could discourage couples from tying the knot in the first place. Quote, young women now have more awareness of gender equality, someone is quoted as saying, adding, many single women can still have a decent life by themselves. Well, as we near the end of this video, I just want to say that love is my business, business is good. You won't hear me talk about discouraging men and women from marrying each other. I'd like to see it happen as soon as possible. The only gender studies you'll hear from me is that men and women need each other. They're different for complementary, not competitive reasons, and that marriage is hard but worthwhile work. If you agree, subscribe and get notifications for Love Beyond the Sea.